AEW was in Chicago on Wednesday night for the first Dynamite after Full Gear, and you knew coming in that the Elite were walking into the Lions Den. They were walking into Punk Country. Kenny Omega knew it, the Young Bucks knew it, and they planned accordingly. Now, I saw Brian Alvarez claim the other day that they didn't plan the things that they did on Wednesday. I don't believe that for a second. They knew exactly what they were doing. They worked their match with Death Triangle as the heels, match number 2 in their best of 7 series for the trios titles, and people lost their minds over it. Part of the reason that they did is because in an interview with Sports Illustrated that I think dropped the day before, Kenny Omega had the following to say about the whole Brawl Out thing and the situation with CM Punk. This is the closest comment that any of these guys have made about Punk or the incident since it happened. He said, there are things that nobody can talk about, so I would encourage people to let it go. It doesn't change that we want a team effort in AEW. I don't even mean implicitly myself and my opponent. It also means the referee, the fans, the people who set up the ring, everyone. Even a technical error can ruin the memory of a match. I can refer back to the exploding barbed wire death match. So I encourage people to move away from it because there is no information to be released. Though I cannot talk about it, I do want the fans to know that I still want the best for pro wrestling. The day after the pay-per-view, I was absolutely devastated by the loss of Jason David Frank. He's one of my childhood heroes. That evening, there was a mass shooting at an LGBTQ club where 5 people died. It's absolutely terrible. After such tragedy, it puts everything in perspective. This isn't Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks against CM Punk. It's people trying to show off their craft. You can boo Kenny Omega, you can boo the Young Bucks or CM Punk, but I hope people don't forget that we are human beings struggling to show our art. Oh my God. Every time I hear Omega talk about his art, I want to gag. That being said, I had no issue with him and the Young Bucks trolling all the CM Punk fans on Wednesday night. They knew they would be booed. They knew they would be showered by Punk chants and fuck the Elite chants. So they leaned into it. They made the most of it. They had fun with it. Matt Jackson tried a buckshot lariat. He landed on his ass, just like Punk did at Double or Nothing. Omega, he bit Pac on the forearm, the same way that Omega allegedly got bit on the arm by Nosferatu, Ace Steel. Omega was the one who got bit in that whole mess. He was the one with bite marks on his arm. So he poked fun at it by biting Pac. And I sat here and I laughed my ass off. I was sports entertained. Then later on, he used the go to sleep, which he went on Twitter later on and credited Kenta for. And I mean, it is Kenta's move. I mean, Punk just borrowed it. So that got a nice rise out of the crowd. And when it was over, Penta used the ball-peen hammer on Matt Jackson. He pinned him to win the match and put Death Triangle up 2-0 in the series. 2 straight losses for the Elite. They played off the crowd reaction. They had the crowd loud for the entire match, and then they lost. Much to the delight of the Chicago faithful. I thought it was great. I saw it for what it was, as a 1-week thing to make the most of the situation that was presented to them. If this was any other city, if they were anywhere but Chicago on Wednesday, we wouldn't have seen any of these antics, I don't believe. It's not very often that you get a crowd as rabid as what they had for that match on Wednesday. I don't expect this to become a weekly occurrence where they go around trolling CM Punk on television. Unless CM Punk is coming back to AEW. I can see how people would watch that and think that, oh, well, Punk has to be coming back now. I mean, come on. This doesn't make any sense unless Punk is not coming back. They must have worked something out with all the parties involved. They must have smoothed things over, and when Punk is all healed up from his injury, they're going to make some money off what happened. We're going to get CM Punk against Kenny Omega. We're going to get CM Punk teaming with FTR against Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, maybe for the trios belts. I don't see it. I still don't think CM Punk is wrestling again for AEW. But anything's possible. Tony Khan has been silent on the status of CM Punk, possibly because they're still trying to work out what future, if any, he even has in the company. Now, I don't watch BTE, so I did not see their new episode where I guess they aired the fuck CM Punk chants from Full Gear. I didn't see it. I don't know what the context behind it was. If they just aired it to make fun of him, then yes, that sounds very petty. And if you think that Kenny Omega is a hypocrite for telling Sports Illustrated that he wishes people would just move on from the Punk stuff, and then he turns around and does what he did on Wednesday, if you think that makes him a hypocrite, I wouldn't disagree with you. Although I look at that, again, as more about... I looked at that as more about people asking them questions about the incident and trying to get answers from them about what happened when they can't answer those questions. You know, maybe they signed some kind of legal document or confidentiality agreement or something. So when he made that comment in the interview in Sports Illustrated, that's how I read that. Like, people need to move on. They have to stop asking questions because we're not going to be able to answer them. You know, he was saying, just move on. We can't talk about it. But yes, the timing of those comments, I think they came out the day before, and then what he did on Dynamite, those two things seem to conflict with each other. So they're hypocrites. But that doesn't make what they did in the match any less entertaining to me. And if CM Punk were to show up on Monday Night Raw in 6 months and mock the Young Bucks by doing their stupid flex pose, I would like to think that I have enough of a sense of humor that I would laugh at that too. I mean, my God, there are times to get upset about certain things. This was not one of those times. I'm glad they didn't just ignore the crowd. They embraced it. That's like something they would teach you in WWE. Ignore the crowd. You have a job out there. We want you to act a certain way. We want you to behave a certain way. Pretend the crowd isn't there. Don't even make eye contact with the crowd. That's not pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is all about the crowd. You're feeding off the crowd. The crowd is the third man. The crowd dictates who's over and who's not. Play into it. That's what they did on Wednesday. I didn't have an issue with it. They embraced it. They embraced the reaction. They set up Death Triangle to be the clear baby faces in the match, even though they've been hitting people in the head with hammers. But those are wrestling fans for you. I mean, Hulk Hogan hit The Rock in the head with a hammer and tried to murder him with a semi-truck, and he was cheered at WrestleMania. He was cheered like the Beatles coming to America for the first time, stepping off the airplane. I fully expect this series to go the full 7 matches, with the Elite winning back the Trios titles when it's all said and done, because I think that was always the goal, was to get the belts back on the Elite and just pick up where they were going when they first won them back at All Out. If CM Punk is not coming back to AEW and the Elite guys continue to take little digs at CM Punk outside of Chicago, that I would take issue with. Especially as EVPs in the company. I've made it very clear. I know people have selective hearing. You should see the comments I got. Just because I like that match on Wednesday, oh my God, the comments I got about, oh, you know, you're in the tank for the Elite. You're so biased for the Elite. Why do you hate CM Punk so much? It's so clear that you hate CM Punk. You should see the comments I got this week. Of course, people conveniently forget the fact that when they accuse me of this and they say, well, you know, based on what you say, CM Punk should be fired from AEW and never hired by WWE, and the Elite should get off scot-free and nothing should happen to the Elite. Even though I said it then and I'll say it again now, I don't believe that any of the Elite guys should be executive vice presidents in this company. I've made that very clear. I know people like to have selective hearing, right? Maybe one ear works, the other one doesn't. Maybe it's got a lot of wax buildup in there, so I'll say it again. For all the idiots who can't hear me the first time, I will happily repeat myself and say it again. Maybe I'll even talk a little bit slower, just to make sure that you actually understand what it is that I'm saying. If it were up to me, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks would no longer have those EVP titles. I said it 2 months ago. I still feel the same way now. Those trios titles would not have been the only titles that I would have stripped from them. Tony Khan didn't do that. Maybe because there wasn't enough there to justify him doing that. Maybe there wasn't enough there to prove that they were the ones leaking stuff about CM Punk. Maybe it's a legal issue. Without cause, he can't take their titles away. I don't know. I don't know how their contracts are made up or what the fine print says. There's a lot that we still don't know about what happened that night. It's very frustrating. There's still no evidence there was even any investigation to begin with. There probably was, but I'm saying there's no evidence that there was an investigation. We just have to take their word for it. We have to take them at face value. But regardless of who threw what and who got bit and who did this and who did that, I think it creates the potential for too much conflict when you have 3 of your top talents in your promotion pulling double duty as executives in that same company. executives who may be able to exert a certain level of influence over other talents in that company. They see what happened with CM Punk and how seemingly nothing happened to the Elite. And if they ever have problems with any of those three guys, they may feel like they can't come forward and say anything about it. They can't do anything to address it out of fear that it could cost them their job. I think it would make more sense to keep the talent and the executive types separate. You want to be an executive? Fine. Retire. Retire and then you can be in the office. You want to wrestle? Then you're not going to be an executive. You're not going to have an executive title. You're not going to have an executive office. You're not going to get the employee benefits. Pick one or the other. Evidently, Tony Khan doesn't feel the same way. So they had their fun in Chicago. They got it out of their system. It made the atmosphere for the match more fun. But that shit can't continue because at that point, there really is no good defense for it.